Great. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Baltimore City Senate delegation meeting this Friday, February 6th. We'll have a brief chair report. The meeting is called to order. We'll have a brief chair report, and then we are hearing the three bills. And then we'll have some announcements. First, we're going to have our first, official voting session this coming Monday. Primarily, the one that will take the most discussion, I believe, will be the 4 Baltimore City government bond authorizations that we heard last week. So we do that in person. That's at 4:15 at the John Cade Conference Room. So that's on the first floor here in the James Building. The following Friday, if there's anyone else, if we have time, if there are other items you want to add to the agenda, particularly if they are some fairly just logistical things, we can certainly happy to put those on the agenda as well. We're also upcoming briefings. This coming Friday, the following Friday, we're going to have time to speak with the newly appointed Baltimore City Elections Director, Clifford Tatum. And then we are going to also, who will be joining us will be Jared Damaris, who is the state administrator. So we'll be able to ask a range of questions about the mid-cycle elections, any range of questions you'd like to have. That part of the meeting will probably just be about a half hour. There may be 1 or 2 bill hearings there as well. The following Friday, we are going to get an update from Baltimore City State's Attorney Ivan Bates, as well as the Baltimore City Sheriffs. We passed legislation, I believe it was last year, creating neighborhood services. So we'd like to hear how that is going. So if there are any specific questions that members have for each of those, please send that to us and we'll send it to them and make sure that's part of their remarks. Okay, so now we'll transition to our hearings. The first bill that we're hearing today. Oh, I guess I should do roll call. Senator Attar.
Here.
Senator Hayes.
Here.
Senator McCray. Senator Ferguson. Okay, we have a quorum. All right, so first we're going to hear Senate Bill 361, Baltimore City Alcoholic License Extension. Senator Attar, I'll remind members that you may have that copies of the bills are in the Google Drive, and if necessary, if any member wants to see certain specific provisions or would like to see the bill, Elijah is able to share his screen and let us look at it as well if there's any kind of specific questions you have. All right, Senator Tarr.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So good morning, colleagues. Under Maryland Code, a liquor license expires 180 days after the license holder has either closed its business or ceased operations. And due to the ongoing renovation of Pimlico Racecourse, the Maryland Jockey Club, they have seized their business. So because of that, their liquor license is going to expire and they need legislation in order to extend it. You may recall last year I had very similar legislation for a bar that was near Pimlico Racecourse. This time it's for the Jockey Club at the Pimlico Racecourse. So what Senate Bill 361 does, it just provides a reasonable solution by extending the time until July 1st, 2029. And that allows the Maryland Jockey Club to resume their operations once renovations are complete. We have Lisa Harris-Jones on here representing the Jockey Club. I'm not sure if she wants to add anything, but if there are any questions, I'm happy to take it. And I ask for a favorable report. Thank you. You're on mute.
Members have any questions?
I do have 2 questions. One, what type of license do they have? And although we're extending it, are they still obligated to pay the annual fees?
I'm not sure. Lisa, do you know the answer to that?
I think it said, I will get you the exact license that they have. I'm sorry, I don't have that in front of me right now, but what was the second question? I'm sorry, Senator.
Do they have to pay the fees?
The annual fees, they still, we're extending when it would expire, but most licensees have to pay an annual fee I'm wondering if they would be still obligated to do
Yeah,
so.
I believe they do have to pay the fee, but I will double check with the liquor board.
Okay.
Senator Tar, I see oh, sorry, anyone else have a question?
No, but
so-
Elijah, if he has a bill, the bill should say what type of license it is.
Do you want to share? Well, I do, look,
I'm looking it up right now. I'm sorry.
Senator Hayes, so, you know, in the bill, this is actually added at the end of the section. Trying to see what section it's attaching to. Oh, yeah, okay. So it's adding at the end of the beverage code. This is a specific, it says a racetrack license issued for the premises in 5200 block of Park Heights Avenue shall be considered unexpired until July 1st, 2029. So that, do I have the wrong bill?
No, that's it.
Okay,
That's it. It doesn't
so-
say which one, but that's it.
Okay, so that seems, Senator Hayes, to me to suggest that the existing license is considered unexpired for the next 3 years. I'm not sure that would trigger a renewal, that it's considered a renewal.
No,
So-
it wouldn't
So
be
that's-
renewal. So annually, all liquor licenses, you
All
have to
liquor
pay
licenses.
a renewal fee each year. So it likely makes sense that they will have to still pay, you know, for 2026, 2027, leading all the way up until they open and continue paying their fee. I'm reaching out to the liquor board right now to confirm that, but my guess is from doing this type of work for years is that they still have to pay their fee.
Yeah, I believe you're right.
And I think
And-
that you did that on purpose, Senator Hayes. You thought of the one question that would stump me because I wasn't prepared to tell you exactly the type of liquor license they have. But I'm
It is
gonna
my
find
goal.
out for
It
you.
is my goal
You
in
know, we
life.
have inquiring minds, like you have to come, we're gonna ask all kinds of questions. No, we don't want any ghost licenses. We want this to continue. We just want to make sure we're doing it right. We don't want to have to come back and fix it later. So, okay, any other questions? Okay, except for just confirming that I don't see why we wouldn't put this also, barring any major changes, consider putting it on the agenda for our voting session next week. Okay, all right, that's the end of the hearing for Senate Bill 361. Next is Senate Bill 279, and that is Senator Hayes. And you have
Is there any other bills that could go ahead of me? Give me like 3 minutes.
Yes, no, hold on. Tamika, I guess Senator McCrae's bill, Tamika, you could go ahead and present that bill. That's the only thing that's here. But Senator Hayes, you do have Councilman Blanchard here and Nina's here.
Yep, correct. I only need 3 minutes.
Okay, well, we can do that for you. Okay. Tamika, are we close?
My apology.
Yeah.
Good morning. Yeah, Senator McCray, he didn't join yet, so he sends his apologies. We're going to turn I'm sorry, the SB 290 over to Nina this is a by request bill from the mayor's office.
Exactly, it is. Okay, great. That works. Oh, here's the senator.
Okay.
Hello, Senator McCray. And I just want to confirm that you are you're willing, or you would recommend that Nina present a 290?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, thank you. All right, Nina.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So good morning, Nina Themelis, Director of Government Relations for Mayor Scott on behalf of the City Administration. Senate Bill 290 would do one simple thing. It would increase the maximum fine and penalty amount that is in Section 48 of Article 2 of the Baltimore City Charter, which is the general powers that are provided to the city by the state. That $1,000 threshold was set way back in 1982. At that time, that represented about 6% of the Baltimore City average median income. In today's dollars, that would be about $5,500. So the bill is just asking to increase that maximum threshold. It would not automatically increase any fines or penalties. It would just allow the city, via ordinance of the city council, to increase some of those maximum penalties. It would also allow us to increase other amounts when we have graduated systems of fines and penalties, so that they're more appropriate for today. It is not intended to be an economic driver or monetary piece of legislation. We really think that that $5,000 threshold would help to deter behavior. Two of the main issues that we experience in Baltimore City where that $1,000 limit really would benefit from an increase are illegal dumping and penalties applied to vacant buildings. We have Jason Hessler here from DHCD who can speak to a bit of both of those issues and why being able to increase that maximum penalty would be so important. But I just urge a favorable report on Senate Bill 290 and happy to answer any additional questions.
Thank you, Ms. Themelis. Jason Hessler is the representative from the Baltimore City Department of Housing and Community Development. Would you like to explain why this increase or how this impacts our city residents?
Thank you. Deputy Commissioner for Department of Housing and Community Development, Jason Hessler. DHCD is probably the driver in Baltimore City behind Environmental Control Board citations, or which are administrative civil citations. We issue in fiscal year 25 over 32,000 of those. There are over 218 different violations that we can cite for, but the majority of those, with the fines ranging from $20 to $1,000, the majority of those are under $500 or less. There's only 42 or 19% that are at the $1,000 threshold. And for what is actually issued, it is those two areas that Nina spoke about. It is illegal dumping, actually three areas. It would be illegal dumping, vacant buildings, and rental licensing. So if a landlord is renting out a property without a proper rental license, which means he also or she also did not have a proper inspection to make sure that the property was safe for the occupants, they are subject to a $1,000 fine. We issue, the majority of what we issue is around the vacant buildings. That was around 9,000 in fiscal year 25 of our 32,000 citations were for vacant 8,691 were for vacant buildings. So that's the largest group. And it is a huge deterrent. It helps us to initially get the attention of owners of vacant buildings that have ignored the notices, ignored the inspector's calls, ignored the postings, and it actually hits them in the pocketbook. So when we first went live with the $1,000 citations back in 2010, we were using it to get that attention, and we would have landlords, our property owners, calling us saying, I'm going to pull permits, I'm ready. And we were using those mainly on those properties where we thought we could shake somebody loose and didn't have to spend additional city dollars on taking them to court, filing receiverships or injunctions or criminal charges. And it worked. It allowed us to figure out which properties really needed legal attention at a higher level and which properties we could just get their attention and get them started. But the $1,000 fine is sometimes just the cost of doing business. And so for a lot of landlords, I've had landlords or property owners tell me this, of like, I just let my property sit there because I've invested all over the city and I just let the property sit there and I don't cut the grass and I don't board the property up. I let the city do that and I let the fines amass. And then if there's a shift in the market, I'll come in and pay that off and sell the property and still make a profit. But it is my model to operate in that fashion. And we at the Department of Housing don't believe that is the appropriate model. And we want to have the ability to do enforcement and hit those property owners where it hurts. This is not something that's designed to go after the residents that are occasionally unable to cut their grass or put out their trash one day improperly and get a citation. Those citations are still going to be at the $50, $100 mark. This is really going to get at those types of violations that are seriously impacting the city and the quality of life of individuals and the economy.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Hessler. Do any members have questions? Also, I would invite council people if you had questions as well, but Senator Hayes?
Did we have this bill last year?
It looks familiar. What?
And is this the bill that we had taken the cap off? And how much they could raise the fines?
Senator Ferguson, I believe that is, I recall that that's what we did. I'm not sure what, yeah, maybe Nina can tell us what.
Is this the same bill?
Yes, this is the same bill. The way it was introduced this year, it was a bill that we had submitted for pre-filing this year. So the cap last year when it was introduced was $10,000. We reduced that to $5,000. We heard loud and clear the desire to remove the cap altogether or to allow the city to determine what that level is, and the administration would be happy with that amendment too. But the legislation as introduced has that $5,000 limit.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I think this is something that should be handled at a local level. We shouldn't have to deal with this at the state level. Just take the cap off and let the mayor and city council figure out what the caps are.
I believe that was the sense of this body last year, and I think that the House, there was a different opinion of that. I guess there was a crossing there, and so perhaps we'll revisit that. Senator Attar?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I know you mentioned, Jason, that this can apply to people for like not cutting their grass and stuff. And I'm looking at the bill. It says the penalty shouldn't exceed $1,000 and imprisonment shouldn't be longer than 12 months. So does that mean that if someone doesn't cut their grass, they can get a penalty up to $1,000 or jail up to a year? Or am I not reading that correctly?
The bill is specific to fines across the city. I was talking particularly of how the Department of Housing uses it. We have the ability under the building code to charge someone criminally for having a vacant building or for violations at their house. We first issue a notice so they have a chance to make corrections. And then if we would then have to file in district court in order to get fines. Currently, our fines are at $500 per day. So we would actually file either a criminal charge, and each day would have to be an individual charge to hit that $500 each day. We don't actually use criminal charges very much in housing. We found that it's not as effective. When I first started 24 years ago, that was the majority of my caseload. Now we do more receivership cases, which don't involve fines at all. It really has a receiver appointed.
So the way it's written now, you can charge $500 per day, but you can only charge him for 2 days because it's 1,000 max?
No, it would be, if we could increase that 500 to 1,000, but the council has set it in the building code at 500. So if this passes, we would still need to go to city council to say, for cutting grass, instead of it being $50, make it $5,000, which is not what we would do. It's more probably around the vacant buildings where I would suspect that a bill would be put forward to create some kind of increase, where right now it's capped at 1,000, but it could, if the building was vacant for 2 years, increase to 2,000. If it was vacant for 4 years, increase to 3,000, something like that.
Understood. Thank you.
You, Senator Tar. Any other questions from senators? Senator Ferguson.
Yeah, sorry, Chairman, I would just, a quick comment. I would say I would not see this as a fine increase or fee increase bill. This is more, as Senator Hayes mentioned, a local authority bill. And so that's where I would say adjusting the dollar amount is less necessary than just the authority of giving local authority for fines and fees.
Correct. Thank you for that. And for those who are listening, it is within the general powers that are authorized to Baltimore City, coming from the state of Maryland. And there were a number of things, if people recall, for example, control of local police. There were a number of things that city government had to come to the state legislature to exercise these powers, because it's a charter government and has different levels of authorities than your typical county governments. So I think perhaps one of the, just to go on to this bill just for a little bit longer, if the council people could provide us some insight around the permitting and at what level, how does, or what role does the council play, in the permitting process, in the fines process in these types of ordinances? What would be your process for setting these? There's two of you here. I don't know which.
Is that a question for
Just-
Councilman Jones and I?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. If you
Yeah,
could help us,
I
yeah,
got you.
understand. Because if we're considering, just because.
Yeah,
as we did
I
last year,
understand.
we thought, let's remove the limit of a cap, and then the full authorities fully.
Sure.
Body.
Well, these processes are typically led by the mayor's office, as are much, a lot of the financial aspects of city government. But there are, as with the things that were brought up last year, with the updates to fines and whatnot, that definitely came up quite a bit during budget season, and there was some disagreement on the council. I supported those, like adjustments for inflation and whatnot that were brought up. But that's usually when it comes up on the council is during budget season. There are things like the tax increase on the taxis and whatnot that have to be sort of more legislated in a more typical fashion.
Yes, but I guess we're just clarifying, there is a process by which you.
We are
do this without having to, if there needs to be a decision to change or a range, et cetera, that can happen at the.
Sure. Yeah, there's opportunity for council oversight on these things. Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay. Ms. Themelis.
Yep, I just wanted to provide one point of clarity.
Thank you.
So fines and penalties are separate from fees. Fees legally can only cover the cost of providing whatever service the city is providing in exchange for that fee. And then fines and penalties, nearly all, I think all go to the council and would have to be increased by ordinance. Now Council President Cohen, as council member, is the council member who increased the illegal dumping fee a few years ago to that maximum $1,000 rate to help try and deter behavior. But all of them would go through the normal introduction process as a piece of legislation through the city council, would be deliberated by members of the council. And then any amendments could be made through that process before final passage and then sending to the mayor for his signature.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. Any more questions on this? All right. This hearing for Senate Bill 290 is ended. Now we'll hear for our final bill, which would be Senate Bill 279, cigarettes, other tobacco products, and electronic smoking devices, local law authorizations. I'm very interested in this topic, Senator Hayes, as
Indeed.
many of us are, so please proceed.
No, thank you so much, Madam Chair, and I'm greatly appreciative that you allowed me a little bit of extra time to get prepared. Thank you so very much. So Senate Bill 279 is a version of a piece of legislation that I've introduced over a number of years. Over the last 2 years, I kind of took a sabbatical because I wanted to focus. I had to focus on other things, more specifically the West North Avenue Development Authority. And so I pretty much didn't introduce any legislation and really focused on those pieces. And so now that we have updated that, I've come back to revisit this idea. As we go throughout our communities in Baltimore, we see a proliferation of smoke shops popping up all over the place. And some of those who will testify behind me will share even more information, whereas the rate of underage smoking and other things, high school smokers and others, has increased dramatically. Baltimore City by far has the highest density of cigarette retailers than any other county in the state. We have probably according to the ATCC, the Alcohol, Tobacco, Cannabis Commission, we have 1,287 places that sell cigarette shops. We have 1,281 that sell OTPs. OTPs are defined in the code as other tobacco products, or anything other than cigarettes. And then ESDs are the electronic devices that people use. And then also, and there's plenty of data when you guys get time. I won't bore you today, but there's plenty of data that speaks to the level of proliferation that we have in Baltimore, especially as it compared to our counterparts. If you look at the number of retailers that have tobacco readily available, there's a retailer for just about every 300 residents here in the city of Baltimore, which is unheard of, right? And how did we get here? Baltimore used to have the authority to regulate around tobacco. In 2013, Prince George's County attempted to make some changes as it relates to the flavored cigars, the little ones, to make sure that they weren't attractive to young kids. And the courts at that time ruled that local authority was preempted by state government unless the state expressly gave that permission to the local level, that there would need to be a change at the local level. So this bill simply gives our mayor and city council the authority to legislate around issues around tobacco. Now, we had the hearing yesterday in Senate Finance Committee. The retailers showed up. They're concerned about having broad authority to regulate around these tobacco shops. I know there's several things that I know that the city would like to address, whether it's the number of tobacco shops and other things, some of the signage that is attractive to young people and not so much in line with things. But I think it's about time that we allow Baltimore City, by the way, who has the oldest health department in the country and the infrastructure to give us advice. We deal with this as a local community as opposed to having it at the state level. And so this bill simply turns it back to that. Now, there's one amendment that we will have to that I have agreed to accept, and that's an amendment that's offered by the city of Baltimore to make sure that we don't run interference with something that we've already done around unpackaged cigarettes. And you'll hear that in a minute. But this is a very important piece of legislation, for the health of our communities, for the viability and other things. And so I ask that you all give a favorable report with the amendment, and we'll share the amendment with you before we vote in a voting session. Madam Chair, you're on mute right now.
Thank you, Senator Hayes. I know you have people speak to this, so who would you like?
Let's start with Councilman Blanchard, followed by Councilman Jones.
Thank you, Senator. So, yeah, I think as hopefully all the senators aware, we have a rapidly proliferating challenge with smoke shops across the city. I pointed out in the hearing yesterday that Senator Hayes and I actually share a block of West Saratoga that has 5 smoke shops on it. They're proliferating to the point where I've heard from multiple property owners in our neighborhood commercial corridors that they're basically they're not like the smaller, cute, row home retail storefronts, that they're holding out for smoke shops to come in because other uses can't really compete with the tenant build out is $0.40. It's a real challenge from a neighborhood perspective. It's a real challenge. Obviously, the public health perspective and the challenge with young people smoking right now is, I think, well known and can't be overstated as a problem. So this is something that we're working to tackle as a council. Very much appreciate Senator Hayes's bill. My kind of interpretation of it, with at least my bill on the zoning side, is it further strengthens our position should there be a court challenge. I think that's kind of how we're thinking about both my bill and Councilman Jones's bill. I don't know if there's necessarily anything that would be newly opened to, in the immediate future, but certainly kind of seeing how the current council package, how that, addresses the challenge, something down the road, to have the tools to be able to look into it, I think is just really important. So I obviously encourage everyone's support for the bill.
Councilman Jones is.
Yes, thank you,
Also,
Madam Chair.
I share part of my district with Councilman Jones as well. So I am very aware and happy to see this legislation.
Yes, as Senator Hayes mentioned and my colleague Councilman Blanchard mentioned, it's definitely an issue throughout the entire district that I was thinking from residents on like what can we do to address it. You know, because they all deserve to live in healthy neighborhoods, you know, and to be honest, while it's maybe looked at as like a retail issue, this is really like a matter of public health crisis. You know, as far as like the impact and the long-term impact that this oversaturation will have on our community. And while we on the council level, local level, looking at creative ways to tackle this issue, because often when reached out to agencies like the ATCC, unless it's specific cases, they often aren't able to investigate unless you have proof that someone underage is, getting sold or they're selling marijuana. Like they often, well, some of these agencies don't often look into it. So we're trying to figure out what we can do to kind of tighten up the regulations. And as we look into legislation, there's often come in question whether or not we have jurisdiction over some of these decisions, and the question of whether or not it'll be upheld in court. Because by the way it's written, the state has, preemption over this topic. But what this legislation will do is make it clear, like Councilman Blanchard said, we do have the ability to make certain adjustments when it comes to tobacco. And that way we can come up with creative ways to kind of home in this industry that's, popping up on every corner in every neighborhood. Often when it comes to some of our rezoning laws, there's certain shops that are able, even in a residential neighborhood, able to be grandfathered in and turn what used to be, a corner bodega that sold grocery stores into now the smoke shop that's right across the street from, in the middle of a residential neighborhood. And we're trying to address also some of these grandfather loopholes that some of these folks are taking advantage of. But in order to do such, legislation like this will be tremendously helpful.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you.
I believe you have someone from the health department, is that?
Yes, Julia.
I'm actually going to kick it to Mary Beth Howler, who's incredibly knowledgeable about this topic.
Hey,
let's go.
Good morning, Madam Chair Washington and members of the Baltimore City Senate delegation. My name is Mary Beth Haller. I serve as Deputy Commissioner for Youth Wellness and Community Health at the Baltimore City Health Department, and I very much appreciate the opportunity to be here today to discuss this bill. I'm here on behalf of the City Administration in support of the bill and to also respectfully request an amendment. Thank you, Senator Hayes, for introducing the bill and for being amenable to our amendment. This bill authorizes Baltimore City to enact and enforce local laws regulating the sale, distribution, packaging of tobacco and tobacco-related products. It does not seek to extend local power to licensing or taxation, which are the domain of the state. Since the Altadas USA Incorporated versus Prince George's County, Maryland decision, Baltimore City and all Maryland counties have been prevented from passing and enforcing legislation to address the sale, distribution, and packaging of tobacco products. Baltimore City, as you've heard, has more than 1,200 licensed tobacco retailers, more than any other jurisdiction in the state. In Baltimore City, 20% of adults and more than 20% of youth use tobacco. We want to do what we can and do more to curb tobacco use, especially among youth. The bill will restore Baltimore City's local authority over the packaging sale of these products. I do want to note that we are requestfully respecting the simple amendment that would repeal Business Regulation Article Section 16308 to a provision that creates a carve-out for Baltimore City to refer cases of unpackaged cigarette sales. Removing this will address what would otherwise become a conflict. On behalf of the Baltimore City Administration, I respectfully ask that you vote favorably on Senate Bill 279 with that amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Haller. Is there anyone else here to speak in favor?
Yes. Ms. Hope.
Thank you. Madam Chair, and members of the delegation, and thank you, Senator Hayes, for putting the bill in. I'm Kathy Hoke. I'm a law professor at the University of Maryland Carey School of Law, where I also serve as executive director of the Legal Resource Center for Public Health Policy. So basically, I'm a public health lawyer. And so I'm here in support of the bill with the city's amendment to remove Business Regulation 16-308.2. Just want to explain that the case that Senator Hayes referenced, Altatus, so that happened in 2013. And let me tell you what Baltimore City had been doing prior to 2013, much like other jurisdictions, is using their local public health power, which is broad in the ordinary course, to address issues that are specific to Baltimore City. So Baltimore City was having a problem with these flavored blunt wraps, tobacco wrapping that was flavored, and it was prolific among the young people. And Baltimore City said, hey, we don't want this. We want to ban these in our community. And so locally, because it was important in Baltimore City, they passed that regulation. Then Baltimore City said, we're having a serious problem with loosies, with unpackaged cigarettes. And they passed a local provision to say, look, we don't want, these cigarettes to be sold everywhere. And we want to have local civil enforcement power. So the health department resources, again, I think we heard that the ATCC doesn't go out and do this kind of inspection. They didn't even exist at that time. There's no one else out there doing this kind of work. And so the health department would go out, conduct the inspections, see where single sales were being made, and be able to issue a civil citation that could go to the Environmental Control Board. Not worrying about not using our criminal justice resources, not charging people with crimes for this, because we know the history there wasn't good. And so it made sense for Baltimore City, and it was actually working quite well for Baltimore City for a period of time. And then by regulation, the then health commissioner, Josh Sharfstein, promulgated a regulation back when Swisher Sweets and Black and Milds became super popular with young people. And that was, I can tell you, that was an acute issue in Prince George's County, in Baltimore City. I work with Allegheny and Garrett County. They had a problem with smokeless tobacco. They weren't having the same problems that we were having here in Baltimore City. So Baltimore City and Prince George's County actually at the same time said, hey, let's do something, impose a minimum pack size for these so they can't be sold in the singles, kind of pricing out really young kids, making them, harder to access. That is essentially what was challenged in court. And in 2013, the Maryland Supreme Court's put the kibosh basically on local tobacco regulation and said, because there is state law regulating tobacco products generally, really the licensure laws in Business Regulation Title 16, 16.5, and 16.7, we're not going to allow local jurisdictions to regulate the sale and distribution of tobacco products, that it's impliedly preempted by you, the legislature. And so it's pretty clear that if you're the ones who took away the city's power, impliedly, through the business regulations article, you also have the power to return it. And it simply makes sense. Most effective public health regulation comes at the local level. The city health department, the city council knows what the problem, they've been telling you what the concerns are in their communities. And this just gives them the power, the flexibility to respond to them from a legislative perspective. And I do want to point out something that came up at the hearing yesterday, that it's not like when this bill gets passed, all kinds of products are banned and we have no one selling, tobacco products in the city. Your colleagues in the city council will consider legislation, and everyone will have the opportunity, as they always do, to testify, to advocate for or against whatever provisions get proposed. And they have to meet, obviously, rational tests that they're, I'm not concerned about, the city overreaching in this space, because they didn't do that before in 2013. They very mindfully and incrementally addressed the issues that were, pertinent to the city. So for those reasons, I think this is pretty simple to say we'd like to have our power back so that we can respond to our community's needs in the tobacco space. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Kathy. Madam Chair, that concludes the testimony from the panelists that I've had. The only thing that I would add, in all categories.
Well, I would like to open it up for discussion, so just please.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I just wanted to say that in all categories, Baltimore City is exceeding the rest of the state. The ATC put out information about how many of these cigarette shops or whatever are within 500 feet of schools. There's 66 of them total in the state of Maryland. 38 of them are in Baltimore City. So more than half of the cigarette shops that are within 500 feet of schools are in the city. Same with hospitals, treatment centers, or whatever. So we have a real problem here that we want to address.
Yes, thank you, thank you. Any questions from members? Okay, well, I have a question, and I'm not sure, there's a couple of things. One, and maybe Senator Hayes knows about this, but the zoning piece, okay? Local government has zoning power. Are locals, is that zoning power restricted to certain types of businesses? In other words, would city government be able to decide through the land use code what types of things could be placed?
Right.
That's
so
what I wonder.
I think, and that's what Councilman Blanchard was alluding to today. He has a piece of legislation currently before the city council on zoning, right?
Okay.
There's still some uncertainty and possible legal challenges that can be bought based off of identifying a certain type of retailer.
Understood. Yeah.
What this bill would do is further strengthen the legal standing of the local jurisdiction, and that we have expressly given them the power to legislate on these things.
In the land use code.
Correct.
Okay. And so perhaps what might be helpful is to identify where in our state land use code this is, and maybe we could also need to adjust some things here. I also have a question about, and one of my concerns about this has to do with, if I think I saw a hand, if that's an answer to this.
Julia from the health.
Julia, if you could speak to that, great.
So not about the land use piece, because that I have to say is so beyond me. But I did just want to reiterate something that Kathy and Mary Beth had said, and I think Senator Hayes makes an excellent point about sort of strengthening, making sure we would be able to do that zoning piece. But the bill is really about the sale and packaging and distribution of tobacco products. That's kind of it's core public health authority to enforce that. And then the zoning piece, at least how I understand it, is sort of this like additional bonus, maybe it would shore up protections about that. And actually I would like to kick it to Kathy if that's okay, because I know she can do a much better job than I can of explaining this.
I mean, what I don't know actually is what the council people have heard from the Office of Law, but I don't think zoning power is actually really at issue here. Nothing about the Altatus decision from 2013 interferes with the city's zoning power. But Senator Hayes is right. It is difficult to zone your way out of the problem that the city is experiencing with tobacco sales.
No,
Does that
I
make
understand
sense?
that. No,
Okay.
I understand it. It's not a either or. It's it's other word. Land use and zoning lately is my thing that I've been really focused on, and have noticed that it's been multiple decades since certain provisions have been addressed at the state level. And so that's what I was interested in. But maybe I have another sort of question about the sale of tobacco and products that look, taste, and feel and smell like cannabis. I mean, I think these shops are also selling types of THC and THAC, and Senator Hayes, I'm interested in that component of it, because almost all of them have that and have it displayed. And in fact, I thought certain things aren't allowed to be. Like I saw something CBD 8.3 or something. Like there's
Delta 8. Yeah.
Yeah. So can you just speak to that for a little bit, and then we'll wrap up? And
yeah, so this is an issue that Senate Finance deal with on a regular basis, especially as we continue to modernize the statute as it relates to the legalization of cannabis, adult use cannabis here in the state. Often these smoke shops will have other unregulated products like hemp or Delta 8 or other substances that aren't regulated and harmful. The ATCC has come to Senate Finance this year to try to identify some of those things and put some stricter regulation around them. But again, there's so many different products out there, and many of these products are literally directed and marketed towards kids that we believe that as these things come up, the local level would be best suited to maneuver and understand how they're impacting our community and how to address it.
And then also, didn't we pass along with cannabis? I believe I remember it when I was in JPR for a year. I thought we'd passed a bill around that cannabis couldn't be marketed
Correct.
specifically to children. And I just wonder, so is it the case that that type of state law or that doesn't apply to these products, or could it apply to these products because they're not regulated? I just wondered.
Right. So in the state of Maryland, we put limits, and we have a bunch of legislation before Senate Finance this year to give greater advertising authority to some of our cannabis shops or whatever. But the idea around like limiting it at the time was to protect the social equity candidates and give them an opportunity to get up and running. And so we're going to be considering several pieces of legislation. But again, this piece of legislation would give the local jurisdiction the ability to identify, other, advertising, packaging, other things that it is not afforded to regulate now.
Got it. Okay, thank you all so very much. Again, why I ask others is I also represent, a third of my district is in Baltimore County, and I'm starting to see that as well. And so that's also why I wonder, well, maybe Baltimore County might want to get on this. And so, okay, everyone. Thank you. That's the end of the hearing on Senate Bill 279. Thank you all very much. Thank you all.
Madam Chair.
Been listening. Again, as an announcement, a reminder that we will have our voting session this coming Monday at 4:15. It is in the JK conference room. On the agenda is definitely the 4 Baltimore City, a discussion, perhaps a vote on the bond bills, a bond authorization, and then if there are, since one of the bills has already had a hearing, we may put that on as well, and anything else that people want to hear. Also, that Friday, we will be having a briefing about elections, and then the following Friday, public safety. So I'm willing to accept a motion to adjourn, unless anyone has anything.
Don't move, Madam Chair.
All righty, second.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye, good. Okay, this is the end of our session, and thank you all so much.